I've been working as a prison guard for almost 15 years. In this line of work, you see all kinds of people: hardened criminals, broken souls, liars, manipulators, even some who pretend to be saints. Over time, you learn to tell stories from people's eyes, and most of the time, those eyes don't lie. One particular day, we had a new intake of inmates. Nothing unusual. Chains rattling, paperwork stacking, men being processed and escorted inside. It was routine until I noticed one guy. He didn't look like a criminal. He wasn't covered in tattoos, didn't have that hardened stare or the usual anger burning inside. Instead, he looked confused. Nervous, yes, but also strangely calm. His clothes were too neat for someone who'd been through arrest and trial. His posture was straight, like a man who was used to speaking in front of people. I couldn't help myself. I leaned toward one of my colleagues and asked quietly, "Who's that guy?" My colleague glanced at the file in his hand and smirked. "That's Alex. 30 years old. Used to be a defense attorney. Got locked up for murder. Apparently killed one of his clients. Jury found him guilty. All evidence pointed his way. An attorney behind bars." Now that was ironic, but something inside me didn't sit right. I've seen murderers, real ones, and Alex didn't fit the mold. There was something in his eyes that whispered innocent. Later that night, while doing rounds, I found him sitting on his bunk, staring at the wall. I stopped and decided to speak. "Alex, right?" He looked up, wary, as if expecting another guard to throw insults or threats. "Yeah, that's me. You don't look like you belong here." He gave a sad smile. "Tell that to the judge." I stood there for a while, torn between professionalism and curiosity. But curiosity won. "So, did you do it?" There was silence. Then he met my gaze and said quietly, "Number, I didn't." Now, I've heard hundreds of inmates claim innocence. It's practically a script in this place. But with Alex, it was different. His tone wasn't desperate. It wasn't begging. It was steady, like a man who had already accepted his fate but still refused to give up the truth. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about him, an attorney locked away for a murder he swore he didn't commit. Over the following weeks, I found excuses to stop by his cell. Sometimes just to talk, other times to listen. He told me about his trial, about the evidence, about how everything pointed to him even though it shouldn't have. The murder weapon had his fingerprints, but he swore it was planted. Witnesses claimed they saw him near the scene, but their timelines didn't match up. And yet, none of it mattered. The jury didn't believe him. The more I listened, the more convinced I became that Alex was telling the truth. One evening, after finishing paperwork, I did something I never thought I would. I pulled out his case file. Technically, I wasn't supposed to dig deeper, but something in me couldn't let it go. I started checking the witness statements. Inconsistencies, contradictions, timelines that didn't make sense. Then I dug into the victim's background. Turns out the victim had enemies, dangerous ones. People with far more motive than Alex ever had. Day after day, I spent my off hours going through documents, talking quietly to people who still knew about the case, even reaching out to an old contact in law enforcement. It felt crazy. Me, a prison guard, doing detective work. But I couldn't shake the feeling that justice had failed. I shared my doubts with Alex one evening. "You're not crazy," he said. "The system failed me." But no one cared to look twice. Something about that cut deep. How many other men in here had the same story but no one listening? After weeks of digging, I found something solid. Surveillance footage. It had been overlooked in the trial because it was blurry, but when I had it cleaned up by a friend, it clearly showed someone else near the scene at the exact time of the murder. Not Alex. Someone else. I knew I had to take action. Filing an appeal wasn't easy. I had no legal authority, but Alex, being an attorney, guided me. Together, we prepared the paperwork. I risked my job just being involved, but I couldn't stop. 2 months later, after endless hearings and sleepless nights, the judge finally reviewed the new evidence. And just like that, Alex's conviction was overturned. He was declared innocent. The day he walked out of prison, I stood by the gates. He turned to me, smiling for the first time since I'd met him. "Frank, I owe you my life. I shook my head. No, Alex, you owed it to yourself. I just helped a little. We shook hands, but it was more than a handshake. It was the start of a friendship I never expected to have. From that day forward, I realized something. My job wasn't just about keeping inmates behind bars. Sometimes it was about listening, about seeing the truth when no one else cared. And Alex? He got his life back, went back to practicing law, this time with a fire in his heart to help those who'd been wrongly accused, just like him. As for me, I went back to my rounds, my paperwork, my duty. But every time I walk past a new inmate's cell, I remember Alex. And I remind myself, not everyone here is guilty. Sometimes the system gets it wrong, and sometimes it takes just one person willing to believe to change everything.